I never thought I would sit in front of a camera, at my age, telling strangers on the internet about the darkest cracks in my family. But here I am, a 61-year-old woman, trying to stitch my broken heart back together by sharing the story of how my children, the very people I carried, raised, and loved more than life itself, became my greatest source of betrayal. If you're watching this, I want you to know that every word is true, no matter how much it sounds like a movie. Because trust me, I wouldn't have written this script for my own life. My name is Margaret, though most people just call me Maggie. I was born in a small town where gossip traveled faster than wind and family reputation meant everything. I grew up believing family was sacred, that love could survive anything if you were loyal enough, forgiving enough, patient enough. Maybe that's why I gave more chances than I should have, chances that eventually destroyed me. I am a mother of 3, 2 sons and a daughter. My pride and joy, or at least that's what I used to tell everyone, while hiding the bruises of disappointment that kept spreading inside me like rot. When I was younger, I thought motherhood would be my redemption. My own mother was strict, harsh even, and she always said I was too soft, too tender-hearted, too trusting. I wanted to prove her wrong. I wanted to raise my children with warmth, kindness, and freedom. I wanted them to have everything I never did: safety, security, and the confidence of being deeply loved. I thought if I gave enough of myself, if I poured out every ounce of love I had, then surely they would grow into good, grateful people. That was my naive mistake, the belief that love automatically breeds goodness. My husband, Robert, wasn't a bad man at first. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who could win over an entire room with a smile. But charm is dangerous because it can hide the truth until it's too late. Over the years, I discovered his charm masked selfishness, secrets, and a coldness that only grew sharper with time. But I endured it for the sake of our children. I swallowed pain in silence, thinking I was protecting them. I thought if they saw me staying strong, they'd learn resilience. I didn't realize they were learning something else, something darker. I remember the day my eldest son, Daniel, lied to me for the first time. He was maybe 12. I found money missing from my purse. Not much, just a few bills. When I asked him, he looked me right in the eyes and denied it, even though I could see the guilt flickering in his pupils. I wanted to scold him, punish him. But then I remembered Robert's voice in my head. Don't make a big deal of everything, Maggie. Kids lie sometimes. You're too sensitive. So I let it go. That became my pattern, dismissing the small betrayals, smoothing over the sharp edges, convincing myself it was just part of growing up. My daughter, Anna, was different. She was sweet as a little girl, with a tenderness that reminded me of myself. She would climb into bed with me whenever Robert's temper boiled over, holding my hand and whispering, "It's okay, Mommy." I thought she would always be my ally, my little shadow, the one who understood me. But life has a cruel way of twisting even the gentlest souls. And then there was my youngest, Michael. He was the baby, the one everyone spoiled, the one I coddled far too much. Maybe because by the time he was born, I was already exhausted from years of Robert's bitterness, from trying to keep the house in one piece, from pretending to the world that we were a happy family. Michael became my comfort, my excuse to still believe in innocence. but innocence doesn't stay pure forever. For decades, I told myself I had done the best I could. Birthdays were always celebrated. School projects always helped with. Tears always wiped away. I worked 2 jobs at times just to make sure they never went without. I went hungry so they could eat. I wore the same winter coat for 10 years so they could have new ones. I gave them everything, and believed that someday they would look back and see how much I sacrificed. But here's the truth I learned far too late. Sacrifice is invisible to those who feel entitled. The real fracture in our family didn't happen all at once. It wasn't one explosive fight or one unforgivable act. It was a series of small cracks, hairline fractures that deepened with each lie, each secret, each selfish choice. By the time I noticed the house was caving in, the foundation had already rotted away. It started the year after Robert passed away. I won't lie to you, his death was a complicated relief. I cried. Of course I'm not made of stone, but beneath the grief was a strange lightness, a freedom I hadn't felt in decades. I thought maybe this was my second chance, my time to finally live for myself. I bought a small cottage by the lake, quiet and peaceful, a place I dreamed my children would visit with their own families, where we'd make new memories untainted by the past. But almost immediately, I realized they weren't coming for me. They were coming for what I had. The first sign was Daniel. He showed up unannounced one evening, not with flowers or food, but with a business plan. He sat in my kitchen, explaining how he needed me to take out a loan against the house to fund his new venture. It's just temporary, Mom, he said, smiling that same practiced smile his father used to wear. Think of it as an investment in your son. My heart twisted because I wanted to believe him, wanted to help him. But I also heard the sharp echo of his father's voice in his tone. I told him no. He left that night with a coldness in his eyes I had never seen before, a chill that made me shiver even in the warmth of my cottage. Then came Anna. My sweet Anna. She called me one night, sobbing, saying her marriage was falling apart. I rushed to her side, held her as she cried, told her I'd always be there for her. But in the middle of her tears, she asked if I could transfer part of my savings to her account just until things stabilize. My stomach sank. I realized her tears weren't only about heartbreak, they were about desperation. I gave her what I could, thinking it would help. But once the money was gone, so was her closeness. She stopped visiting, stopped calling. Michael, my baby, was the one I least expected to turn. But perhaps that was my biggest blind spot. He came to me one weekend with a bright smile, telling me he wanted to take me on a trip. Just the two of us. My heart soared. I packed my bag like an excited child. But halfway into the journey, he stopped at a bank and asked me to sign papers. It's nothing. Mom, he said, just a little authorization so I can help you manage things. My hands trembled as I realized what he was asking for access to my accounts, my savings, my life's work. I refused. His smile faded, and I saw something raw in his eyes, resentment. That was when I realized the unthinkable. My children weren't protecting me, loving me, cherishing me. They were circling me like vultures, waiting for me to weaken so they could feast. I can't explain the kind of pain that brings. It's not like heartbreak from a lover or betrayal from a friend. When it comes from your children, it cuts through your soul in ways words can't capture. It makes you question your entire existence, every choice you ever made, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. I asked myself again and again, was I blind? Was I foolish? Or was I simply not enough? The betrayal didn't stop there. In fact, it grew darker, uglier, until it consumed everything I thought I knew about my family. And the truth, the horrifying, bone-deep truth, was still waiting to be uncovered. I didn't sleep much in those days. I would lie awake in my little cottage by the lake, listening to the water lap against the shore, trying to find peace in the rhythm. But my mind was restless, haunted by questions that had no easy answers. I wanted to believe my children's behavior was temporary, that stress and grief had warped them, that time would bring them back to me. But deep down, I knew something irreversible had shifted. The warmth I once saw in their eyes had been replaced with calculation. The turning point came one autumn afternoon. The leaves outside were burning shades of gold and crimson, and I had spent the morning baking pumpkin bread, hoping maybe Anna would stop by like she used to. Instead, I heard a knock on the door and opened it to find all three of my children standing there together. My heart leapt, thinking maybe they had come to surprise me, to reconnect, but their faces were too serious, their smiles too forced. They sat me down at the dining table, the same table where I had once cut their birthday cakes, sewn their Halloween costumes, and helped with their homework and slid a stack of papers toward me. It was an agreement. They wanted me to sign over partial ownership of my cottage to them, for estate planning purposes, as Daniel put it. He spoke with the slick tone of a businessman, Anna nodding along, Michael staring at me with those pleading eyes I used to melt for. This way, Mom. Everything will be secure. You won't have to worry about the future. But I knew better. They weren't securing my future. They were securing theirs. My hands shook as I pushed the papers back. No, I said firmly. For the first time in years, my voice didn't waver. Their smiles cracked, and the truth seeped out. Daniel's jaw clenched. Anna's eyes darted away. Michael muttered under his breath, "You're being selfish." Selfish? After everything I had given them, after all the pieces of myself I had sacrificed. That was the word they used. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning. Refusing them lit a fire of resentment that would consume everything. Not long after, I started noticing strange things. My mail went missing. Bank statements never arrived. One evening, the electricity shut off unexpectedly, and when I called the company, they told me my account had been closed at my request. Only I had never made such a request. It was as if someone was erasing me, piece by piece. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But then a neighbor mentioned seeing Michael leaving my house when I wasn't home. Another time. I found Anna's perfume lingering in my bedroom, though I hadn't invited her over. The walls of my sanctuary, my safe place, began to feel violated. I decided to dig deeper. One night, when the fear in my chest outweighed the exhaustion in my bones, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold and opened my laptop. I combed through my accounts, my records, my credit reports. My heart nearly stopped when I found loans in my name I had never signed. Credit cards I had never applied for. Debts stacking up like shadows I didn't recognize. It was my children. They had forged my signature, stolen my identity, used my trust as a weapon against me. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to demand how they could do this to their own mother. But when I finally called Daniel, his response chilled me to the bone. "Mom," he said calmly, "maybe you're just getting forgetful. Maybe you don't remember what you signed." Gaslighting me, twisting my reality, making me doubt my own mind, just like his father used to do. For days, I wandered my house like a ghost. I looked at the family pictures on the wall, the Christmas mornings, the summer vacations, the smiling faces, and I didn't see my children anymore. I saw strangers who had studied my weaknesses like a map and used them to destroy me. But here's the part I never expected amid the betrayal. I found something else. Something darker. I was going through old boxes in the attic, looking for documents that might prove the fraud, when I stumbled upon a folder I didn't recognize. It was tucked inside one of Robert's dusty briefcases, hidden beneath tax records and yellowing bills. Inside were letters, dozens of them addressed to a woman I had never heard of. The handwriting was unmistakably Robert's, but the words were filled with tenderness and longing I had never received from him. He spoke of love, of dreams, of a child he wished he could acknowledge. My chest tightened as I read the final line of one letter. "One day, our son will know the truth." Our son. I sat there, shaking, trying to breathe as the attic spun around me. Robert had another child. Somewhere out there. I had been raising 3 while he had hidden a 4th from me. A secret son. I couldn't stop the questions. Was it someone I knew? Did my children know? Had they grown up with this shadow sibling lingering over them? Was this why they resented me? Because they had always known some truth? I didn't. I spent weeks piecing it together. Eventually, through whispers from old acquaintances and some desperate digging online, I found him. His name was David. He was only a few years younger than Daniel, living in the same city all along. And when I saw his face in a photograph, Robert's jawline, Robert's eyes, I knew it was true. But what shattered me wasn't just Robert's betrayal. It was learning that my children knew. They had known for years. Daniel admitted it in a rage one evening when I confronted him. "Of course we knew. Mom, everyone knew except you. You were too busy playing martyr to notice." My world collapsed. Not only had my children betrayed me in the present, but they had conspired in silence for years, keeping me in the dark about the biggest secret of my marriage. I felt like a fool, a puppet, a mother who had spent her life giving, only to be fed lies in return. And yet, as broken as I was, something inside me hardened. I had always been the soft one, the forgiving one, the mother who said yes when she should have said no. But betrayal has a way of burning away softness until all that's left is steel. I knew I couldn't undo the past, but I could stop them from destroying my future. The plan began quietly, like a seed of rage sprouting in the shadows. I documented everything: the fraudulent accounts, the forged signatures, the missing mail. I contacted lawyers, banks, even the police. I reached out to David, the hidden son, and told him the truth his mother never could. And slowly, I began weaving the threads of a trap my children would never see coming. But before I could pull it tight, something happened that nearly broke me for good. It happened on a night heavy with rain. The storm outside rattled the windows of my cottage, thunder rolling over the lake like an omen. I had just come back from meeting with a lawyer, one of the hardest decisions of my life. Because walking into that office felt like walking away from the idea of family I had clung to for 61 years. I was tired, drenched, and all I wanted was to curl up in bed and forget the world for a while. But when I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. The air was different, thick, unsettled. A lamp had been knocked over. My papers, the ones I had spent weeks gathering as evidence, were scattered across the floor. My heart pounded as I called out, "Hello, who's there?" Silence answered, except for the storm outside. Then I saw it. On the dining table, my laptop was open. Across the screen was a note in large, bold letters. "Stop digging. Mom, this won't end the way you think." My knees buckled. It was them. My own children. They had broken into my home, rifled through my belongings, and left me a warning like criminals threatening their victim. I sat there, staring at the glowing screen, shaking so badly I could barely breathe. The cottage had been my sanctuary, my one safe place, and they had violated it. They had turned my home into a battlefield. That was the moment the last piece of me snapped. Love was still there, I can't deny it, because a mother's love never fully dies, but it had twisted into something sharp, something that cut both ways. The next morning, I called David, the son I never knew I had, the secret child hidden in the shadows of my marriage. He answered with a cautious voice, wary of me. I told him everything about the letters, the betrayal, the break-in. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then a long exhale. "I always wondered if you knew," he said softly. We agreed to meet. Sitting across from him at a small diner felt surreal, like staring into a mirror of my past. His face carried Robert's features, but there was something in his eyes, kindness, gentleness that reminded me of the boy Robert used to be before bitterness consumed him. As we spoke, I realized David wasn't like my other children. He had grown up without the luxury of my sacrifices, without the roof I had bled to provide, and yet he had built himself into a man of integrity. He listened. He cared. He wanted nothing from me but the truth. It was a cruel irony. The child I never raised treated me with more respect in one afternoon than the 3 I had raised my entire life. But my plan didn't stop there. With David's help, I gathered more evidence. We traced the fraudulent accounts back to Daniel and Michael. We uncovered money funneled into Anna's name. Piece by piece, the web of betrayal revealed itself, and I made sure every thread was documented, every lie exposed. Still, part of me hesitated. These were my children. I had rocked them to sleep, kissed their scraped knees, cheered at their graduations. Could I really destroy them, even after everything they had done? That question gnawed at me until the night of Thanksgiving. I had invited them over, though every nerve in my body screamed against it. But I needed them under one roof. I needed to see their faces, to confirm what I already knew. The evening started tense. Daniel brought wine, acting as if nothing was wrong. Anna arrived late, her smile brittle. Michael avoided my eyes altogether. The air was thick with unspoken words, knives hidden behind pleasantries. We sat around the table, the turkey untouched, the candles flickering shadows against the walls, and then I laid it out. The forged documents, the loans, the break-in, the truth about David. Their faces shifted from shock to denial to anger. Daniel slammed his fist against the table. Anna burst into tears. Michael muttered that I was turning against my own blood. That's when I told them blood is not an excuse for betrayal. Family is not a shield for cruelty. You broke something in me that cannot be mended. The silence after that was heavier than thunder. What happened next felt like something out of a nightmare. Daniel stood and shouted that if I went through with this, if I exposed them, he would make sure I was left with nothing. Anna sobbed that I was ruining the family. Michael whispered that maybe I deserved it after all those years of choosing duty over joy. Their words cut me deeper than any knife, because they weren't just denying their guilt, they were blaming me. I realized then that there was no saving them. No amount of love, forgiveness, or sacrifice could undo the rot that had taken root. My children had chosen their path, and I had to choose mine. So I did. Within weeks, my lawyer filed the papers. Investigations were launched, accounts were frozen, and for the first time, the power shifted. They called me, begged me, cursed me, even threatened me. But I didn't waver. I had been weak for too long. Now I was steel. But just as I thought I had gained control, one final twist unraveled everything. A twist I never could have imagined. One that made me question not just my children, but my entire life. The twist came in the most ordinary way, which almost made it more cruel. I was sorting through the last box of Robert's old files, preparing to hand everything over to my lawyer, when I found an envelope tucked inside a worn manila folder. My name was written on the front in Robert's sharp handwriting. I froze. My breath caught as I opened it. Inside was a letter, yellowed with time. My hands shook as I read the words. Robert wrote that if I was reading this, it meant he hadn't been brave enough to tell me himself. He confessed not only to David's existence, but to something even darker, that the money he had once hidden, the debts I thought we had paid off together, had actually been funneled into trusts for David trusts under my children's names. It hit me like a sledgehammer. My children had always known, not just about David, but about the money, the deceit, the secrets. They hadn't stumbled into betrayal by accident, they had been raised in it. Robert had made them part of his hidden world, while I had been the fool, playing house in the daylight. My heart collapsed under the weight of it. For years, I believed I was the protector, the martyr, the glue that held our family together. But the truth was worse than betrayal, it was conspiracy. My children had been in on it all along, groomed by their father to keep me blind, to treat me as the outsider in my own home. I dropped the letter and screamed. The sound was raw, animal, a lifetime of pain tearing out of me. My chest ached as if my heart were clawing its way out. For hours, I sat on the floor surrounded by papers, sobbing until my throat burned. Everything I thought I knew about my family was gone, turned to ash. But grief eventually hardened into resolve. If Robert had spent his life turning my children into betrayers, then I would spend whatever time I had left exposing them. Not out of spite, though God knows I felt that too, but because I finally saw the truth. I had spent my life mistaking endurance for strength. Real strength was standing up and saying, "Enough. The next months blurred into a storm of courtrooms, investigations, and family implosions. Daniel fought the hardest, trying to spin the story, to make me seem senile, unstable. Anna played the victim, crying to anyone who would listen. Michael disappeared for weeks at a time, surfacing only to hurl accusations that I had destroyed the family. But the evidence was undeniable. The loans, the forgeries, the trusts, it all pointed back to them. The day the judge froze their access to my accounts, I felt both triumphant and shattered. Triumphant because, for once, justice tilted in my favor. Shattered because these were my children, and I had dragged them into the light like criminals. And then there was David. Through it all, he stood quietly by my side. He didn't ask for money, didn't push for recognition. He just listened, helped me organize the endless papers, sat with me when the nights grew too heavy. He was the reminder of what could have been what family might look like if it was built on honesty instead of secrets. The climax came one final evening when Daniel barged into my cottage unannounced. His face was twisted with rage, his eyes bloodshot. "You ruined us," he spat. "Do you understand that you took your own children and destroyed them?" I looked at him. My firstborn. The boy I once held against my chest. The boy who used to draw me pictures of superheroes and call me his best friend. My throat tightened, but my voice was steady. "No, Daniel." "You destroyed yourselves. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw trembling. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, not guilt, not love, but fear. Then he turned and left, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. I never saw him again. Anna sent me one last message months later. A single line. "I hope you're happy." I cried for her, not because her words hurt, but because they revealed the truth she still didn't understand. Happiness had nothing to do with it. Survival did. Michael, my baby, he broke me the most. He left a voicemail one night, drunk, sobbing, saying he hated me but loved me, saying he wished things could go back to the way they were. I listened to it 100 times, my heart breaking anew each time, until I finally deleted it, because there was no going back. The way things were had never been real, and so I stood alone in the ashes of what used to be my family. Alone, but not defeated. I rebuilt slowly. I secured my finances, repaired my credit, strengthened the walls around my home. I let David into my life, cautiously at first, then more openly. He introduced me to his wife and children, and for the first time in decades, I felt what genuine family warmth could be. Watching his kids laugh in my living room, their innocence untouched by betrayal. I wept, not from sadness, but from a fragile kind of hope. Now, when I sit here telling you this story, I feel both the weight of everything I've lost and the strange lightness of what I've gained. I thought I raised good kids, but I learned too late that goodness can't be forced, that love isn't always enough to protect against deceit. The lesson I carry, the one I want to leave you with, is this family is not defined by blood. It is defined by truth, by loyalty, by the willingness to stand together in both light and darkness. Sometimes, the people you birth will break you, while the people you never knew you had will save you. And sometimes, The greatest act of love you can show yourself is the courage to walk away from those who keep cutting your soul. If you've made it this far into my story, thank you. It means more than I can say. Please, if you felt something in my words, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe so you can be part of this journey of truth and healing. And tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered betrayal where you least expected it? I want to hear your story, too. Because none of us should carry pain like this alone.